Hello, I would like to call this meeting to order, and I will begin with the chairperson's remarks. Good evening. I acknowledge on behalf of the Board of Trustees that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Likwitah people. I am John Kerr, chairperson of the School District 72 Board of Education. In attendance virtually this evening is Vice Chair Kat Eddie and trustees Joyce McMahon, Susan Wilson, Daryl Hagan, Shannon Briggs, and Richard Franklin. Also in attendance are Superintendent Jeremy Morrow, Associate Superintendents Morgan Kyle and Phil Sismic, as well as Secretary Treasurer Kevin Patrick. Also present are Lynn Logan, Assistant to the Superintendent, Jennifer Patrick, Manager of Communications, and providing technical support is Natalie Crawshaw, Assistant to the Secretary Treasurer. Please note that there is a 3-minute production delay between the live event that you are viewing and the meeting participants. The question and answer function is open for questions on agenda items for this virtual meeting. Questions that are posed during the meeting will be addressed at the end of the session. The board continues to meet in a virtual format on the direction of the District Health Officer's Office. This step was taken in order to maintain compliance with the Provincial Health Officer's Order. It's my sincere hope that this will be the board's final virtual meeting and that trustees will be able to meet in person when the new school year begins. However, our board continues to take precautions and to make accommodations where possible to protect the health and safety of all members of our learning community. Since the last board meeting, we have all become aware of the horrendous discovery of 215 unmarked graves of Indigenous children at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. This discovery has shocked everyone and has brought a focus to the sorrow, pain, and suffering of the families and Indigenous communities whose children were forcibly removed from their homes to residential schools, many never to return. I extend my personal condolences to the First Nations of our community, as well as to those throughout the province who were victims of this genocidal policy. Our district, through our Director of Aboriginal Education, recognizes the trauma of these historical events and is making every effort to address their consequences in our schools. It is my hope that the truth of the injustice and damages imposed on our Aboriginal communities be recognized and addressed as soon as possible. As we approach the end of this tumultuous school year, we can again look forward to graduation ceremonies for students who have successfully met the requirements for high school graduation. For the second year, graduates will not have the graduation ceremonies that have been traditional in the past. Instead, schools will be honoring their graduates, beginning with a car parade that will leave Carey High Secondary School on Saturday, June 26th at 11 a.m. This route is available on the School District 72 homepage for those who wish to honor our grads by watching the parade as it passes. Following the parade, graduation ceremonies will be held at each school. I am certain that I speak for the board as I offer congratulations to all of our graduates and wish each graduate success and happiness in whichever path they choose to follow. Well done, grads. Over the past several weeks, COVID-19 numbers have decreased significantly, and restrictions are beginning to be lifted starting today, with a further loosening of restrictions on travel and gatherings proposed for early July. The increase in the proportion of the population which has been vaccinated has undoubtedly had a great impact on this development, and recently vaccinations have become available for children from ages 12 to 17 years. With the increase in more contagious variants of the COVID-19 virus, I believe that it is important not only to continue to behave responsibly, but also to take advantage of these vaccinations if you haven't already done so, to ensure the safety of everyone in our society, especially those who are most vulnerable to this insidious disease. If you haven't yet, please get vaccinated, not only to protect yourself, but to protect others. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the effort of our students who have completed a most difficult, perhaps the most difficult year of their school careers. You have met and overcome the challenges in this once-in-a-century pandemic. To our school staff, and that means everyone, administrators, management, board office management, and teachers, educational assistants, and all other members of our school community. I extend my deep appreciation for all that you have done over the past 15 months to provide the best learning opportunities possible to our students. You have faced a dangerous threat and have emerged triumphant. It's my hope that you all have a well-deserved, restful, fulfilling, and safe summer, and that when you return to school in September, conditions will be approaching normal once more. Again, thank you for everything you've done for our students over the past year. Our students are indeed fortunate to have you at their sides. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's remarks. Mr. Morrow. Dr. Morrow.
Thank you very much, Chair Kerr. And tonight you certainly shared a number of comments. We share a number of comments tonight, so I'll share some of the comments that weren't covered, but certainly appreciate those comments tonight. Just wanted to mention to community that summer school registration is open and that we already have over 600 students registered for programs and classes that will begin on July the 5th. Throughout this particular school year, I have at each public board meeting let the community know whether there's been any school exposure notices or events, and I'm thrilled to again at this board meeting share that there's been no exposures at any of our schools since our last board meeting. And would just echo Chair Kerr's comments that we still ask for the continued response to public health protocols, and just a reminder to take care of those pieces. Just to share as well that the last day of classes for students is a half day on June 29th, and report cards will be sent home with students on that day, so that day is coming soon. We have tonight just an opportunity that I wanted to make sure was shared, which is there is a BC Summer Reading Club being offered through Vancouver Island Regional Library this summer with a theme called Crack the Case, which runs from June 29th to August 17th. Registration has opened yesterday, and students can pick up their Summer Reading Club package at the Campbell River Library, and it's a mystery solving reading record. And I too wanted to conclude my comments tonight by just reflecting a little bit on this extraordinary year that is coming to a close. At the end of July last year, the government announced that schools would be organized in learning groups or cohorts. This change necessitated the rapid shift of several aspects in how our schools operate and the school day routine. Start and end times were put into shifts, recess and lunch times were staggered, amongst many other changes. But perhaps the most dramatic and significant change was how this high school timetable was altered to offer one course at a time over the duration of 4 to 5 weeks, rather than 4 courses delivered over 5 months in the typical semester system. Before the school year started, we heard from families desperately seeking information and wanting details to help them make personal decisions for their family and seeking reassurances that schools would be safe. Staff each day came to schools, some with underlying health conditions and health concerns of their own, coming each day knowing that it was possible that they could be exposed to COVID. And the pandemic showed us so clearly that we can't underestimate the resilience of our students, our staff, and our school community. Schools have been open every single day of the school year this year. And while we did have some cases in our schools, our schools have been safe, and there have been no confirmed or known cases of in-school transmission in Campbell River. And I'm grateful for the efforts of our staff and the efforts of our parents by ensuring that students that were not well didn't come to school. And I've appreciated that we've been able to deliver that level of safety this year. So often in our focus on schools, that our energy and attention is on the learning and teaching in our classrooms where it should be. But I want to make sure we don't lose sight of the connectedness and the value that every role and every department in our system ultimately provides in support of those classroom environments. And I think one of the pieces about the pandemic that's been so clear is the incredible value that everybody in the system brings to ensuring student safety. When we look at roles like custodians truly being acknowledged for the vital role that they do play in ensuring safety and well-being of our students. So I just wanted to finish just expressing heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to our staff, to our families, but most particularly to our students. And I am so optimistic and so hopeful that not only will next year be another great year of learning, but it'll be a year of learning that's more familiar for our students. And I can't wait, even though it's not the end of the school year, I'm already looking forward to the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Morrow. We will now move to approval of the agenda and the approval of the minutes. And the suggested motion is that the minutes of the meeting of May 25th, 2021 are hereby approved as circulated. Could we have a mover for that? Okay, Trustee Eddie, seconded by Trustee McMahon. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands or say aye. Okay, the motion is passed. We will move on to the next item. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none. Are there any additions or alterations to the agenda? Okay, Secretary Treasurer Patrick.
Yes, I would like to add to 14D the per diem meal rate for 2021.
Okay, and Trustee Eddie? You had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, Kevin took care of it.
All right, Trustee Wilson.
I would like to add an item, I believe probably under number 12, electorate and board matters. And it would be to discuss the rural and remote funding for students.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other additions? Okay, no alterations. All right, then we'll move on then to the next item. And that will be the approval of the agenda. And the suggested motion is that the agenda is hereby approved as amended. Moved by Trustee Franklin, seconded by Trustee Wilson. Okay, all those in favor, please raise, pardon me, is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hands. Okay, the motion is passed. The report on board decisions from the June 15th confidential board meeting. Vice Chair Eddie, please.
The report is that the confidential meeting, we discussed matters of lands, legal, and personnel. We have concluded our agenda for this evening and won't be going back tonight.
Thank you very much. All right, there is no correspondence, public submissions, agenda submissions. So we will move to educational submissions, and the first one will be the literacy framework, and that will be a presentation by the Literacy Committee. Okay, you're muted, Brenna.
Sorry, John, Chairperson Kerr. For some reason they were muted. I'm going to try to queue them up again.
All right.
We're slightly behind. Yeah. Did you leave?
I think that's better.
Okay.
There.
We've figured it out. So nice to see you this evening. I'm Brenna Ewing. I'm the current principal at Southgate Middle School. And
Kim Paddington and current principal at Sandown Elementary School.
So we are going to share our screen and get started here.
Okay, can you see our intro slide?
We're good.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, so the two of us are happy to be here today on behalf of our literacy committee and on behalf of the district, just to present our a synopsis of the literacy framework overview and kind of where we are along this journey right now.
And I just want to mention that this is truly a draft process where we are still gathering input from administrators. They're just met with the teacher librarians tomorrow, today, meeting with the learning support teachers tomorrow, and then on Thursday, this framework draft will be presented to all schools.
Okay, so just the short version of the rationale for putting together this framework is that over the last 10 years, our district data has shown declining literacy rates. That went into the building of our strategic plan, and this is kind of looking at supporting that first goal in our strategic plan. We also see that the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students has continued to widen over these years, and this framework looks to address these issues.
Yeah. So as you can see here, it is the belief of this committee and all the work that went in that we are implementing the literacy framework and remembering that we are using our equity and action work to guide our planning, and that this will be the roots of the work that we are doing in all areas of our strategic plan. So if we can think of the equity of action being the roots of this work, while each area of the strategic plan is a branch, including the literacy framework that supports these roots. This is going to be important work that guides our planning as we intentionally address the gap between our Indigenous and non-Indigenous students.
So here are the committee members. You can see it was a diverse group, including teacher coordinators, administrators, learning support services, learning support teachers, our English language teacher, Kim Sticks, senior management. So this team collaborated over a number of weeks to bring together the history of literacy in our district, looking at all the work that has been done over the years, and looking at putting together a comprehensive and systematic plan to move forward in supporting all of our learners in the area of literacy.
And you've all received the draft portion of the plan. So you've already seen that these are the main areas that will be covered within the framework. And some of the feedback has been very positive so far, and we definitely are receiving some things that we will tweak as we go along.
So the developmental milestone, so while they're not, we can't put them on the screen here just because it was a little bit too large of a document. Hopefully you've had a chance to see those. So first we'll just acknowledge that this information, the basis of it was from the Canadian Language and Literacy Network, and then it was edited and revised kind of with the Campbell River learners in mind. It is a K-5 continuum, and so the committee did identify the key literacy concepts in each grade level. It was also discussed whether we should use an arrow to say to talk about the continuum, or whether we should actually put the grade levels on there. And one of the things in the past few years, while there's been conversations around literacy in the district, is that teachers were looking for this guideline and would like the grades in there just to help guide their instruction.
And this is the assessment kind of timeline. And the assessment timeline is something that we will be using to guide the instruction of teachers, but in no means meant to take away from the importance of that robust and engaging literacy environment. I think somebody put it well after our meeting yesterday, and they said it's kind of like we're trying to make a cake, and sometimes the teachers aren't knowing all the ingredients to put in the cake. So we are going to be very deliberately breaking down the components of reading and looking at them and helping teachers assess if students have those specific requisite skills that will lead them to become strong readers. And these assessments are being done consistently and district-wide, and that way we are going to ensure that we are not missing any students, and that literacy instruction and supports can be equitable across our district, no matter what school or classroom a student is in.
Yeah, and the idea being, if you bake your favorite cake a whole bunch of times, eventually that just starts to be integrated into what you do. You do it without thinking about it, but we all need that instruction to get to that place. So our literacy strategies, this is kind of the piece that is still being developed, because our teachers and school literacy teams, each school will have a literacy team next year. We'll be looking at the class and school data, and then we'll use specific strategies to target the skills needed for individual learners and individual teachers' classrooms. Our teacher coordinators will be used to help build teacher capacity and create equity across all schools. And then, of course, the leadership at school-based admin, combined with the expertise of coordinators and putting those systematic structures in place, is what will move our plan forward. I think if you've seen the plan, it kind of looks at every single person being a piece of that. I mean, from the student to their family, educational assistants, the board, senior management, that we know that everybody has a part to play in growing literacy in our district and supporting our students.
And sometimes what we're finding within schools is that teachers will know there's something missing. The kids aren't yet where they want them to be, but they don't quite know how to identify what is it that they're missing specifically. So this plan will help them identify those areas, and it will truly be used as a formative assessment.
And also the literacy and instructional strategies is where kind of the robustness of this plan will be providing that rich literacy instruction to our students. Again, like Kim said, these assessments are to ensure that we are not missing any students across our district, that we have no students that get into our middle schools or high schools and we find out that they're lacking in some of their literacy skills. This plan is to intervene early and intentionally in order to support our students, because we know that getting to that grade 3 point is so important in just their future success in life. So all of this will be within the structures of a literacy-rich classroom environment. So this is a piece of that overall literacy in a classroom, but an important piece, and hopefully the piece that will help guide us forward.
So
we talked about this a little bit, but again, getting feedback from different stakeholders within our school communities. We've already made changes after the admin meeting. We've made changes even just before this meeting based on feedback from our teacher librarians. So this is a draft. It also, we call it now, I think we're into version 1.1 or 1.2, that it is evolving. It's probably, we know literacy instruction will never be complete. So yeah, we're just happy to be part of the process and thankful to have the opportunity to share it with you. And then I think we may have a few minutes
left for questions
if you have any questions. So
Trustee Eddie.
I'd like to start by thanking you ladies and the team for your work. It does take a net of caring professionals to help our children be successful in literacy and ultimately in their educational life. So thank you for the work that you've done to this. I have dug into the draft copy that we got, so I do have a couple of questions. I see that it's changed since the draft that we received a week ago, so thank you for that ongoing work. So we were talking in the original draft, they were talking about tier 1, 2, and 3 intervention strategies for students. Can you describe to me how a student will be identified to move up in a tier? And if the child is identified as an at-risk learner in a grade 2 level, for example, will intervention start immediately when they begin grade 3?
That's a great question, Kat. So all students will start in tier 1. And so the first part of this plan is to do that scan, that assessment at the beginning of the year to find out where our students are. So once we do that scan, teachers will be able to create a class profile of their personal kids, and will learn from that scan what areas should be their first to target. So that's that tier 1 classroom-based intervention. You try something, after about 6 weeks, when you do a check-in again, we look how many students have moved. If they haven't moved, then that tier 2 piece kicks in. And that's why we're helping schools create literacy teams to help them address and do and form intervention cycles with those kids at the tier 2 level and tier 3. But the purpose is to create the tier 1 level first in your classroom, so that you should be able to, in tier 1, capture 80% of your students.
There and right now in where we are in building the framework is we've really been focusing on that tier 1 piece, but like you can see that the RTI, kind of the first draft of that RTI triangle was in the draft plan, but that's where we're going to look at the tier 2 piece and specific, like what will we be using if, again, like after that first intervention cycle, or if there's a significant gap, then what are we going to use for those second steps? And that still is work in progress, but definitely part of the plan.
And often tier 2 can be done in the classroom with the classroom teacher. You know, that is the hope, and part of this is building the capacity within teachers so that we will present to them with the coordinators and the literacy team. Teachers will learn 1 to 2 strategies to help fill the gaps of certain schools, that certain skills that students may not have, because sometimes they don't know what to look for, and that's part of this capacity growing.
May I just have a follow-up, Trustee Kerr?
Yes, go ahead.
So looking further ahead into the elementary levels, into the 3+, 2 questions, a 2-part question. What do you feel the capacity of our elementary school teachers are in using the PM benchmarks assessment? And do you feel that our kind of senior elementary teachers really are experienced in using the close and maze techniques for assessing comprehension as the kids move forward? Have you kind of set up any Pro-D around that? Like, are you thinking
that is part of the plan, and that was definitely came out of sort of that was part of the meeting of feedback with admin, and then definitely part of the feedback with teacher librarians today is one of the things that we're looking at is that we need to do some revisiting of like teaching around the running record specifically. I mean, that is like the PM benchmark, but going deeper into the running record, because I mean, it has been something that's been used in our district for many years. But what we're finding is we need to revisit that and again have Pro-D around like the running record and how that can be done consistently across schools. So that definitely is a part of the plan.
Because a PM benchmark alone doesn't give teachers the information that they need to specifically target skills. And that's like, are they having difficulty with blends? Are they having difficulty? Like it's not specific enough. And I know Trustee Hagan keeps raising his hand. And
Okay,
but yeah, that is definitely part of the plan for that implementation and teacher professional development.
We're pushing up against the time allocated to this section, so we'll move to Trustee Hagan.
Just a quick question. How big is our intervener cohort? Like the people who are going to intervene with those kids that just aren't getting it in the classroom, and you've identified them. We've tried what we can, but how big is that cohort of interveners, or what do you project it being?
I think that's a difficult question, and that's the piece around the consistency. And I think that equity scan across our different district, because that team might look different at different schools depending on what the data is finding. And I mean, each context needs different supports, and it's like it'll be part of, like we said, the school team, student services. I mean, teacher coordinators will be involved, admin will be involved, but within the staffing that we already have, I guess, it'll just be like, how is that equitable based on that consistent data?
So the nice thing about this, Trustee Hagan, is that you could have 2 schools, Pinecrest, Sandown, or 3, Georgia Park, and they all are saying we need extra support, but with that consistent and measurable data that we will all have, we'll be able to look and say, you know what, right now, maybe this is where we need to focus some more support. We do have teacher librarians that will be part of this plan as supporting. We do have the classroom teachers. We do have the learning support teachers. The board did give us 0.1 for every school to help build capacity within schools. So we do have the start of a team for every school.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. I think we all understand that competence in literacy is one of the factors that allows people to be successful in life. And I really appreciate the fact that you're diving into it so deeply to see what our district can do to help all of our students be competent in the field of literacy. So thank you very much for your efforts. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening.
And thank you for the support that you're giving us into literacy in our district. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Goodbye. Okay, then we will move on to the next presentation by Mr. Etheridge from doing outdoor programs on Quadra Island. So Mr. Etheridge, you're on.
Oh, thank you very much. And I believe Fred Schaub, is he here? He was going to give a brief introduction.
He's here.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to start up. That's fine. Okay. I have a PowerPoint presentation, so thank you very much for inviting me to present to you on my proposal and project for next year. I'm just seeing if I can cue this up for you guys here. Okay. And has the PowerPoint popped up onto your screen?
You're good. We're ready to roll.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. Here is the Quadra Elementary School Quadra outdoor classroom project. First of all, just a really brief introduction. I've lived on Quadra Island for 13 years. I have degrees in geography and environmental studies, and I have a post-degree teaching certificate. I have 25 years of experience in outdoor and experiential education, and I have 15 years of experience in the ecotourism industry primarily as a kayak guide. I'm a specialist in risk management. I have extensive training in wilderness first aid, and I'm also an athlete and coach. I do triathlons, cross-country running, swimming, and coach those as well. And I'm a practitioner of place and nature-based pedagogy. So my presentation will focus on the place-based education movement and outdoor classrooms just generally around North America and the world. And then quickly I'll get into my program and the overview of my program. And then I'm going to end with what are other BC school districts doing? So what are some other innovative, unique and exemplary programs that we have in public school districts around the province? So really quickly, the principles of place-based education is that really foundationally the learning takes place on site, in the schoolyard and in the local community and environment. The learning focuses on local themes and systems. It's personally relevant to the learner. So it's really taking what do they know through their experiences of living in a place, and how can we build on that. learning is interdisciplinary. So we don't necessarily say, well, we're doing math now or we're doing science now. We're learning through experiences. Learning is hands-on and experiential. So our learning experiences contribute to the community's vitality and environmental quality. Learning, and this is a really important one, learning is supported by strong and varied partnerships with local organizations, agencies, businesses, and government. And local learning serves as the foundation for understanding and participating appropriately in regional and global issues. And place-based education programs are integral to achieving other institutional goals, such as, for example, the inclusion of Indigenous worldviews and perspectives, or as we're seeing so much in the news right now with regards to reconciliation. And obviously part of reconciliation is understanding the relationships that Indigenous people have to place and to land, and I believe that place-based education is one way that all of our students can develop a deeper appreciation and understanding of those very important issues. So my program, as I've proposed it to Fred so far, this program is primarily about relationships between learners, the Quadra community, local places, and nature. It is about learners establishing connections with the people and places of Quadra Island. We'll be learning through service projects, citizen science projects, collaborating with the community, and the inquiries that emerge from those experiences. And the role of the teacher is to tease out the core and the curricular competencies that emerge from these learning experiences. The role of the teacher is more facilitator and guide. So some examples of service projects that I have been thinking about and have done so with my class over the last 5 years, and some others that can be built upon. The Quadra School Garden Park is right beside the school parking lot. It was a wasteland of broom and blackberry. And about 20 years ago, Mia Frischholz, a resident of Quadra and a teacher, had just retired. And she decided that she thought that that would be a wonderful place to plant Indigenous species. They did, and then since transferred the land to the Strathcona Regional District. The space is perfect for an interpretive signage project. And that is something that students could take on within my program, which would include artwork, traditional ecological knowledge, and of course research conducted by the students. Trail maintenance and building with the Quadra Trails Committee. We're 2 kilometers walk from the community center, full of trails. It's about 132 hectares of trails, or of land, including trails. And we have relationships with the Trails Committee, and I've worked with them in the past with classes. Volunteering with the community lunch program. Again, just a short walk away, and to have an opportunity to engage with the community. Stream keeping with the Salmon Enhancement Society. This year I have asked permission and have been given permission to use the old hatchery, which is now the Salmon Eco Center. And we will be using that space every once in a while as a field learning station or center where we can actually learn stream keeping skills. And yes.
Could I get you to pause for a moment? Mr. Schaub he wasn't able to get in to do the introduction, but he is ready to do the introduction now. So would you mind pausing to let him do that?
I don't mind at all.
Okay.
All right.
Then we will carry on with Mr. Schaub doing the introduction. I hope.
Chair Kerr, there seems to be about a 3-minute delay that's causing some difficulties or some lag time between when we make a statement and when a presenter comes on. So if we can just give Mr. Schaub another minute or two.
Well, could we have Mr. Etheridge go on, and then when Mr. Schaub is ready, we can stop?
We can do that, absolutely.
Or why don't we invite Mr. Schaub at the end of Mr. Etheridge's presentation. So if you carry on and give the presentation in its entirety, and then at the very end we can hear from Mr. Schaub. Perfect. Great. Okay, carry on, Sheldon.
That works for me. Collaborating with the Island Climate Action Network, a local organization that has been around the island for probably 10 or 15 years now. And one of the issues that they are very strongly involved with is food security. They are quite interested in looking at collaborating with our school garden. We already have a school garden, but to really look at expanding that. And to see what can emerge out of a collaboration with an organization that has extensive gardening and sort of food security experience. And another one which I'm pretty excited about is just half a kilometer away or less is our new Quadra Seniors Center. And I think that there are some wonderful intergenerational learning opportunities that could arise with both the Quadra Senior Society and the Quadra Circle, just a short walk away from our elementary school. This is a brochure that I created. I sent this out to our families, and we have about 20 to 22 students that are already sort of 90+% committed to this program. The program details are 3 days a week outside, where we will be doing those service projects, and also here, this photo is actually an example of a citizen science project where we're measuring the stream flow rate of Pitcock Creek. And 2 days in the classroom, where we can really engage with our projects, with our inquiries, our research that we might be doing, the sign project, where not everything we want to be doing is conducive to being outside 5 days a week. It's also an opportunity for our students, of course, to be taking the library program, our wonderful art program, our music program at the school as well. Numeracy and literacy are foundational to this program. And of course, the grades 3 to 5 curriculum for all subject areas will be covered using nature as the primary lens. Really briefly, because I know I'm getting close to my end of my time here. There are many exemplary programs around the province that I've been looking at for some time, and I've managed to reach out to some of these people involved in these programs. The Maple Ridge School Project is really interesting. They don't have a school. They do have access to a portable classroom in the winter time, and they have a yurt with a wood stove. They're entirely outdoors. They go to local parks, regional parks, provincial parks throughout Fraser Valley, and that's where school is conducted. It's K to 7, it's a public school, it's about 100 students, and it's really interesting, quite innovative program. There's a documentary about the program that I can send out to, I'll send this out to somebody if you'd like to get this information later. The South Canoe Outdoor Learning School is in Salmon Arm. And they just have a really interesting framework. Their mental, physical, emotional, and social lens at which they're looking at learning. And they're really seeing how place, experiential learning, inquiry, and community emerges from those those 4 lenses. And of course, they use the medicine wheel, which is a traditional Indigenous symbol of unity and harmony. In Squamish, there are 2 elementary schools that are doing some really amazing things with outdoor classrooms. The Valley Cliff program has restored a wetland. They've planted over 2,000 plants and trees. They've installed signage. They've created wandering paths, pollinator gardens, a pollinator meadow, and they have gardens as well. They've done extensive invasive species removal. This is a bird's eye view of what their transformation of their schoolyard looks like. And what I think is really cool about this is that they've turned a significant portion of their schoolyard into a living textbook, where learners can actually engage with their learning opportunities right at their school, with all sorts of really interesting things to get involved with, whether it's growing food or whether it's restoring areas with traditional and indigenous plants. And they have an interpretive trail with signage that is in the indigenous language as well. And finally, the Mamquam Edible Schoolyard Project. This is a project with the Squamish Climate Action Network, and they probably the highlight of this program is that they have an 800 square foot greenhouse, which includes an outdoor classroom. Students and teachers can use it year round. They are really looking at a really holistic program where they actually sell seeds and plants, and that money actually then goes back into their program. And they're learning a lot of skills, everything from marketing and business financial skills to of course the gardening and just the stewardship that skills that they're learning. And here's a picture of what their part of their schoolyard looks like. So in closing, I want to reiterate how inspiring it is to have this opportunity to pilot a project like this on Quadra. And the great thing is that I don't have to reinvent the wheel. There is many great opportunities and some real passionate people throughout the province to draw upon, and some models that are working really well throughout the province. So that's my project in a nutshell, and some inspiration that I have to keep moving forward. I just would like to thank again the Board of Trustees to allow me to present this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Patrick, do we have time for questions first and then the introduction, or would it be better to do the introduction?
Absolutely, you have time for questions first, as it seems that we've lost Mr. Schaub, so we're trying to bring him back in. So okay. Please proceed with questions.
Are there any questions of Mr. Etheridge? Well, I have one, seeing that there's nobody else. Okay, with the climate that we have and the weather that we get with rain and southeasters, and essentially the climate that's sometimes pretty difficult, is there a problem clothing the students? Like, you know, it takes like specialized footwear if you want to have a kid who can be outside all day without having really cold feet or wet feet, or a jacket that they can be, even if sheltered outside, and be warm on those nasty days. How is that arranged, especially for families that might have limited means?
That's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that question. First of all, our PAC has a wonderful fundraiser where they work with a company that basically sells really high quality rain gear. And one of the things that this creates is a little bit of money for the PAC. But what they also do is they've managed to purchase quite a lot of very high quality rain gear, including boots. And so we have in one of our resource room quite an array, and we're going to keep building upon that until we have a class set. of gear, of multiple sizes of boots and clothing. The other thing that we have discussed at length is an exchange program for our school, where sometimes kids grow so fast that it's not like they're getting rid of their rain pants because they're broken and no longer usable, but it's simply because they don't fit anymore. And so we have discussed having an exchange program where, you know, we can give good quality gear, and then, you know, if people are in need of gear in September, they can kind of grab that with their families. And finally, I've had the opportunity of, because of the pandemic, I had an outdoor classroom 3 days a week, 2 mornings and 1 afternoon this entire year. And we've been outside. These families that I was working with, I had the EAP Hub program here at Quadra Elementary School. And these families were adamant that the children were not going inside. They were not feeling comfortable with COVID. And so our PAC bought a wedding tent, a 20 by 20 wedding tent. And we have that set up in the forest. And we have experienced a lot of wet and cold, and the kids are pretty amazing. The only times we had to cancel our program was in high winds, because that's not safe, obviously. And so this year I had to cancel it because we didn't have an option to be inside. But of course, the plan and the hope is, of course, COVID, you know, could change circumstances, although it's not looking like that for next year. That basically we have the option of going inside the classroom on those really, really nasty days. Yeah, I think we've definitely discussed the issue of both clothing and inclement weather.
Are there other questions? Okay, Trustee McMahon.
And
hi, thank you for that, Sheldon. It's very exciting, very inspiring goals and vision for this program. I'm wondering, it's a lot to take on as one person, though. Do you have, you know, some kind of collaborative backup with the other members of your school community and the larger community? Is there a succession plan should, you know, things happen and you're not on Quadra any longer? What's the longevity of this program?
A great question as well. We have a core group of parents that are incredibly supportive of this program in the community, and I'm actively seeking out many collaborations with community groups like the Island Climate Action Network, for example, and others. And so I'm feeling like I have strong support. As far as at the school, our staff increasingly are becoming more and more comfortable and competent working outdoors, and I personally would absolutely love to see our program become successful enough that parents start saying, hey, what about the K to 2s? Why can't we have an outdoor classroom too? And you know, hey, why not? As far as succession is concerned, you know, that's obviously a complex question. You know, union issues come into play there, hiring HR issues around, you know, if I were to leave the school, you know, ideally, there would be a teacher that would have the skill set, and I know there are teachers out there, but that really does become a question of whether or not place-based education or nature-based education becomes a recognized sort of specialty skill. I would certainly argue that, you know, as important as French immersion is, and it is, and I think it's a wonderful thing to be offering, but I also feel that, in my opinion, nature and place-based education are also specialty skills, and you know, that one could be identified as having those skills if a program was in need of a teacher. But thank you for that question.
Thank you for the answer.
Trustee Wilson.
Sheldon, I'd like to add my congratulations to Trustee McMahon's. Your enthusiasm is really wonderful. You've brought a wonderful program to Quadra. COVID had many downsides, but one of the upsides was that it allowed us more flexibility and trying to make certain things happen to meet all the various needs of students. And so I think the opportunity you had this year to have the part-time outdoor program as part of the distance learning was wonderful. And honestly, that tent in the middle of the forest, it looks like something medieval or magical, I'm not sure, but it's such a wonderful resource. And I think that's the other bonus for Quadra, because basically the school is built with a forest as a backyard. And so you have that richness of nature right on your doorstep. And I hadn't thought about it till you mentioned it tonight, but really you are walking distance from many other resources. And I know there are others on the island that I'm sure would be interested in becoming involved. So I really thank you for your initiative, your support. I first met you 13 years ago when you were teaching adults about the outdoors and kayaking and appreciation, and now you're able to bring it into the classroom. So thank you for sharing all those skills with our kids. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Susan.
Trustee Briggs.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say thank you very much for your presentation. I'm wondering how many kids that program serves. I'm in Sayward, so we have a very similar setup with the school being right near the ocean and Big Creek and the woods right behind. The kids are always playing out there. My kids are watching elk out the window right now, so we're super into nature. I'm just wondering, how does a program like that get started? Is it like who initiates that? And I'm just thinking like for Sayward, like how does something like that get started up here, or is our school maybe not have the population for that? I'm not sure.
I think that's a great question, Trustee Briggs. My sense is that you know, in this particular case, it was sort of a perfect storm of something that I've been wanting to do here on Quadra Elementary since I moved to the island 13 years ago, so I've been sort of, you know, constantly looking for angles as to how to sort of propose and get a project like this going, and eventually it came down to COVID and what Susan was referring to, and then basically realizing that it can be done. And I took that proposal to Fred Schaub, and he said, you know, why not? Let's go for it. We've got everything we need here, you know, all we need is students to fill the seats, and we certainly managed to do that. But at this point, I think you know, it's teachers are extremely important. But I do see that you know, there is need to look at support from higher levels of, you know, administrative, senior admin, and also from the board, as far as looking at how can these programs be supported across the board. School District 72. They're certainly popping up all over British Columbia, and it's super inspiring to see that kids are really having these opportunities. When I was in elementary school, I only dreamed of being able to actually learn from experience. That's all I could ever think about was, why am I not outside in the Gary Oak Meadow that's right outside this window, as opposed to being inside. So.
Are there other questions or comments?
Thank you. If you ever want to move, come to Sayward.
As someone who grew up in rural southeastern Ontario, I had the run of square miles in those days, where I could basically, after school, I could wander until it was basically time for dinner or time to come back and go to bed. And during the winter, my grandfather had snowshoes. I could go out on the snowshoes. Just being able to wander and to see the richness and variety of nature there. And I think it's something that most children now don't have the opportunity to engage in. So I thank you for providing your students with that opportunity to get out and to learn about and to appreciate the richness and the value of nature. So thank you very much. And I'm going to go to Ms. Patrick again. Is Mr. Schaub available?
Yes, he is. He's showing on my screen as being a participant in the meeting now.
Great. Well, then let's have Mr. Schaub do his introduction at the end.
I'm sorry, Chair Kerr. He's showing as a participant and his microphone is indicating that it's not muted, but I would take the quiet as indication that perhaps he's not with us after all. Apologies.
Well, that's really unfortunate because the introduction would have given him a chance to tell us more about you, Sheldon. So thank you for your presentation tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate being here to speak tonight.
Okay. Well, that was quite something. Quite a great presentation. Could we move on then to our next item, which will be the rural and remote funding for students, and that would be Trustee Wilson.
Yes, another Discovery Island school, Cortez. On Friday, Superintendent Morrow was able to go out to Cortez and visit with the school and the community. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend due to a previously scheduled medical appointment, and as we all know, we don't change those very easily. But Superintendent Morrow kindly shared the events of the day, the themes of the conversations that he had with parents of the community and staff. And there was one that I wanted to bring to the board tonight. Sometimes we are able to make some changes or at least advocate for some changes. So one issue that was brought up by parents as a concern was the $350 boarding allowance that has been in place for many, many, many years and hasn't changed at all over that time. Now, unfortunately, there's no specific funding for students who leave Cortez and come to Campbell River, even though they're within the same school district. And so this funding has to be found in our general funds in order to provide the grant to the student. So it seems like an opportunity for us as a board to advocate to the Ministry of Education to continue funding Cortez students, even if they are needing to leave their home base of Cortez and finish their education in Campbell River. So I wanted to put that suggestion out and see if there are any comments, or perhaps Superintendent Morrow might have more to add to that, or perhaps Kevin Patrick might have more to add to that from the financial aspect. So just bringing it forward for some consideration.
Trustee Eddie.
I have a question, probably that probably Kevin can answer. In other districts, in order to attend secondary school, students are required to billet or travel very long distances. Is there a funding stream that covers those students, or are those costs absorbed by all school districts? Is there a way we can advocate?
The last time we did a provincial review back in 2013, I believe, there was very few districts that still provided boarding allowances, and the amounts at the time were identical to SD 72s. There wasn't any funding then, and there still isn't any additional funding specifically for the purpose of boarding.
Trustee Hagan?
Yes, perhaps it would be time to do a review again of our own district. I do think it's really important to help kids if they want to continue on with their education, to support them, but not at the cost of the students that are living here already. But we balance our budgets all the time based on need, and if we took a look at it, and again, that would give us more ammunition to request from the government that they actually look at this and say, if you really want kids to go on and get a good education, this is essential that parents can afford to do this. I mean, especially now with COVID, it really comes to light. But it would be nice to do a review and then make a funding application to the provincial government to say that this is something that we deem as being necessary after the review.
Trustee Eddie?
Just as another feed-in, outside of the education budget, there are funding streams for rural and remote communities, and I'm wondering if it might be worth some investigation to gather some information to see if there is an additional funding stream available to parents in order to offset some of those costs.
So within the education system, if students attend class or school on Cortez, there is an additional rural and remote grant that they will get. But as soon as they travel to the city of Campbell River to attend school, they lose any additional rural and remote grants that they would have got had they attended school on Cortez. So, you know, as the costs increase, the funding actually declines, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Do we have anyone prepared to make a motion on either of the suggestions, either to do a study and then to approach the provincial government, or to bring it to provincial council? BCSTA is something that will be brought there. Like, do we have a motion to be considered here?
I don't have one written up in advance, but I would like to make a motion to the effect that we further investigate the funding arrangements currently available for rural and remote students in our district, and to advocate as appropriate for further funding to be made available. Daryl, can you refine that somewhat?
Go ahead, Daryl.
I think that was a good motion, actually. I think that we need to just review it. We haven't had an increase in 10, 15 years. We're expecting our students. I think it's a good expectation to have them come to Campbell River if they are needing specialized education or heading in a stream. And then I think it's up to us to lobby after that. So perhaps we should do the study first. Why don't we move ahead on that and just have, in due course, a report back to the board.
So how does that affect your motion, Trustee Wilson?
I don't think it affects it, because we can do both parts. We can first do the study and then report back, and certainly it would be something I'd rather see we move along more quickly than rather take too long to work on it. So let's make it a comprehensive motion, and then we can work through it at our best possible efforts.
Could we then have the motion read back?
Natalie or Lynn, I got just part of it. I've got that I guess the board further investigate funding for rural and remote students, and to advocate for, I don't have anything after that, so.
Increased funding,
Okay, increased funding.
nice and short.
Okay.
Any funding. They're not funding it at
Yeah.
all right now, so
Any fund.
they could just begin to fund it. We can always top up things if we think, if they'd give us the $350, we could always increase.
So you'd be talking about government funding,
Right.
Yes.
you know, okay. So do we now have a motion?
Yes.
Kind of.
Moved.
Yes, yeah, do you want me to read it again?
Please.
Okay, to further investigate funding for rural and remote students and advocate for increased funding.
Do we want government funding for rural and remote students?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion on it? Okay, Trustee Hagan.
We have a first and seconder?
It was moved by Trustee Wilson, seconded by
Myself.
All right, we got it. All right, is there further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Motion's passed unanimously. Thank you very much for bringing that up.
Well, and thank you for your support of the intention.
Good. I personally know that boarding allowance has been there for at least 20 years. So think of what the cost of everything was 20 years ago. All right, we'll move on then to educational issues and Associate Superintendent Kyle, summer school update.
Good evening. I've got 3 updates to give you, so I'm wondering if you would like me to do one, and if there's any questions, then go into the second, or do all 3 and then questions at the end. How would you like me to do that, Trustee Kerr?
Why don't you do it that way? Do
Okay.
it all 3 and then questions at the end.
Okay, fair enough. So summer school is surprisingly 2.5 short weeks away. At this point, we have approximately 500 students who will take advantage of a variety of programs in the elementary and middle program. Elementary has about 19 programs, middle has 10, but more likely 8 will run simply because of numbers of registration. Some of the examples of these programs are inventors and innovators, junior marine biologist, young authors workshop, design and technology, middle school prep, summer garden and food security. So there's a real variety to meet all kinds of kids' needs and interests. The numbers are really low at secondary at this point, so we're unsure how we might be able to meet the need there. And we're very interested to see if those numbers are correlated to the way the secondary timetable had worked this year. We certainly had feedback from administrators that there were far more successful students in the 1/8 model, so that could be driving the lower numbers at secondary. We did make a change this year to try and make access to registration more equitable to families. We started registration at 7 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. for those parents that were already started work. We also provided paper registration for families identified at schools that may not have technology or the skills with technology to register online. And at this point, we have had 7 families register by paper. So we think that was a really good move for equity and reaching out individually to families. Leading this work is Sean McLaughlin, taking on summer school principal for the 3rd year in a row. We're so fortunate to have Sean's leadership again and for that continuity. We have a new partner for Sean to work with this year, and we're happy to announce that Kelly Gage, an intermediate teacher from Georgia Park, has taken on the leadership role of summer school vice principal. And the schools that will be having summer school this summer will be Georgia Park, Southgate, Cedar, Phoenix, and Robron. So we're really excited to have that going again this summer. Our Healthy Schools framework. So we have the mental health framework, and elementary schools are presently doing some of the mental health programs, such as the EASE program. However, there's not been necessarily the explicit purposeful instruction school-wide at the middle and secondary levels. There's been great work done by individual classroom teachers and counselors, the school admin and support staff. However, it has been more or less on individual student need. The intention of the framework is to anchor intentional work around mental health literacy for all students across all grades in middle and secondary. The committee has met with middle and secondary admin and counselors to discuss the framework and what their important role will be in ensuring that there's intentional work around implementing the framework. They've been asked to share their implementation plan at the beginning of the school year. There's been an expectation at the schools that all students at middle and secondary will receive sexual health education. And there's been significant work done this year by a group of 6 teachers who are developing scope and sequence for sexual health education at the middle schools. There's been purchase and development of sexual health kits that have been shared and sit and housed at the middle and secondary schools. The committee has also been working on developing resources for the new webpage that'll be out in September, with supports in there along with explicit lesson plans. We've also had a qualified sexual educator work with teachers in middle and secondary to build their capacity. So as the years move on, we'll be able to have teachers taking on a lot of that important work. And the physical literacy, I think I mentioned last board meeting that we're very close to finalizing that. So we're partnering with Sport for Life and Pacific Sport for a 0.7 physical literacy coordinator position, with the intention, like all of our coordinators, to build teacher capacity in the area of physical literacy. The project is a multi-component school-based health promotion initiative for our elementary and middle schools, all of them. Research has indicated that physical activity plays a vital role in promoting mental and physical health, which can often show in better attendance, improved self-regulation, and overall general health. And this project is fantastic for our district because it's completely funded through the province of BC under the physical literacy for communities, the BC initiative, and city of Campbell River. So we're really excited to work with our community partners in this project for the benefit of all of our students. And we're hoping to have a teacher in place early next week to work with the teachers in the schools. So there is, in a nutshell, the 3 areas. If there's any questions.
Trustee Eddie and then Trustee McMahon.
Thank you. Thank you, Morgan. Coming back to the summer school and talking about the secondary level registrations, are we finding that one academic discipline is being more subscribed than others? Like, are there?
The one that right now we have 17 is grade 9 math, prep grade 9 math. All of the others have no more than 4 across the board. So the math, which generally is quite high, is very low. So we're trying to figure out how we might be able to navigate those students who are wanting that. So, you know, is it a blended online? We're seeing what we can do there, but the numbers are very, very low. 5 is the highest registration other than the grade 9 prep.
Interesting.
Yeah, but we do know that the failure rate is much lower than it's been in any other years. So that could be the reason, because it is remedial. It's not full credit.
Right. Thank you.
Trustee McMahon, did you have a question?
Yes. Whoop.
Okay.
I seem to lose my video from time to time. Thank you, Morgan. I'm just wondering, can you foresee any kind of potential for dovetailing some of the goals and practices around physical literacy with place-based and nature learning?
Yeah, thanks for the question, because I believe that the training, so the teacher that is hired for this position will go for 3 days training in August, and there is some place-based learning in there. So there is the physical literacy will be not in what the kids call gym, but it'll be in classrooms. It will be outside. It will be in the hallways. So it really is encompassing all the areas where kids can have movement. So it is not sport-based. And so people, when they hear about that physical literacy, they think sport. This is not sport. This is movement. This is understanding body where possible. And what I'm really excited to see, how we can collect some data around self-regulation, particularly in the classroom. So this is going to really be significant for a lot of kids that wiggle around and need to move and still be able to be there. So it is across the board in all places, and outdoor being one of them. Yes.
It would be nice if we could use some of the funding that is targeted to this physical literacy to also be able to enhance the opportunities for outdoor experiences, place-based learning outdoors, because of course many of those behavior issues somehow evaporate when kids are outside. There's a lot of, there's a lot of common goals between the two, focuses. So it would be neat if we could capitalize on the funding.
Yeah, the funding that's given through this partnership is very targeted. So it is we've got to stay within the goalposts, but there is certainly a component of it that is outdoors. Absolutely.
Okay.
Trustee Hagan.
Thank you.
Yes, I was just wondering, is summer school for Campbell River, is that unique, or does Courtney offer the same kind of programs during the summertime? And do we have any students from other districts coming up that perhaps would want to take courses?
You know what, Trustee Hagan, I can't really answer that. Maybe Phil or Jeremy might be able to speak to the Courtney situation. That I can't speak to. I know it's unique from a district that I came from. We did not do this. Summer school at secondary is pretty common. For elementary, middle, I believe it to be more unique, but Jeremy and Phil may have some different perspective on that.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Courtney and summer school. Do you have any information on that, Phil? Do they run a similar kind of program?
I think they do. They don't have the history that we do, but I recall last year speaking with the superintendent and they were exploring summer school. So my assumption is that Courtney does have a summer school program.
I guess the reason for my question is merely that if they don't have courses to offer their children, that a presentation could be offered to another district if we need boosted numbers in certain programs.
Thank you. Yep, we can. I'll talk to Sean about that.
Other questions or comments? Okay, and we will move to business administration, and we will go to finance warrant number 5. Secretary Treasurer Patrick.
Yes, we're just presenting finance warrant number 5 for May 2021 to the board to be passed.
Moved.
Okay, so the Trustee Franklin, you had a question? Are there questions?
I was just seconding the motion.
Okay, well, read the suggested motion first then. All right, the suggested motion is that finance warrant number 5 dated May 31st, 2021 be accepted as presented, and that's moved by Trustee Franklin, seconded by Trustee McMahon. Is there discussion on this motion? Trustee McMahon.
Yeah, I have a really perhaps simplistic question, but it's been on my mind for some time. Our U.S. accounts, are they there because there are some suppliers or expenses that we may have in U.S. dollars so we can pay them in U.S. dollars? And is the exchange rate taken into account when the dollars are documented on the warrant?
We don't take into account the exchange rate. The way we use our US account is almost like a clearing account. When we do need to send some money via a check to a vendor in the US, of course, we ask to pay in Canadian funds, but sometimes we can't. We have to convert to US funds. So we'll just transfer over the funds at the current rate at that time, just before we pay it. And we do have a little bit of a float in there to cover any variances between the time of when we write the check and it gets cashed. but we do keep it very minimal to reduce the impact of currency change. It is such an immaterial amount that we don't adjust for it with our year end, and our auditors are okay with that.
Thanks.
Further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Okay, the motion is passed. We'll move then on to trustee remuneration review. Again, Mr. Patrick.
Yes, so this is the remuneration review that comes to the board each year. As mentioned in the memo, it is the process and the formula was originally developed by a community-based committee, and the board adopted that formula. And basically the formula takes in current trustee remuneration for various districts. In our case, it's up and down the island, but it also compares that with the size of the district. So it has some adjustments for the size. Heading into, well, this year when we have done the review, there's actually a very minimal change. The board chair increases by $28, vice chair $112, and the trustee stays about the same. But any change to trustee remuneration does require a vote of support by the board. So I have this report and these recommendations here, or the other recommendations, the results from the analysis for the board to consider whether to support an increase or not.
Okay, the suggested motion. Oh, Trustee Hagan?
No, I was just going to move it. That's all.
Okay, the suggested motion is that the board move forward with a recommendation for an adjustment to trustee remuneration as per the formula adopted by the board in 2005, which is reviewed on an annual basis in April of each year and will take effect on July 1st of the new fiscal year. If that motion is defeated, then we will then move to an alternate motion to keep remuneration the same. So, any further discussion on this? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Okay, opposed? Okay, the motion is passed. Okay, so we'll then move on to the 2022-23 capital plan application. Again, Mr. Patrick.
Yeah, so this capital plan application, so we actually have a new format, new system that the ministry has implemented. It's called a MyCap system, which we have a direct connection through to the ministry to enter all this data. So what you're seeing now is actually the first year that we've had a summarized sheet like this from the MyCap system. In the past, I've had to summarize, compile it to present it to you. But we are actually applying well ahead of when we hope to get these funds. We're currently applying to receive funds for 2022-23. So it's very far ahead. And basically the ministry asked for a priority wish list from the school district. And I don't have it up to share it, but I can kind of read through some of it. It is in your agenda. And we apply for each of these projects under the various programs. So the good news is, unlike 10 years ago when there was only got new schools and there was annual facility grant that didn't go up, they do receive applications and have funding available for a bunch of different programs now. So we have applied for classroom additions at either Ripple Rock or Ocean Grove. Of course, we've applied for a replacement of Cedar. For our seismic, we have a number of projects listed, which is a seismic upgrade for Cedar. And again, hopefully that would tie into a potential replacement. We've got a seismic application for Penfield, Rawburn, EDM, and Oyster River. And so these are the major capital programs that we'll apply for. Of course, these are not the more frequently approved projects, but we have to get it on the list. We have to submit it. We do provide backup. Our manager of operations, Steve Wood, provides the ministry with all the backup. So we'll look for the board to approve this. There is a minor capital plan, and that's where we get a lot of our funding, which includes playgrounds, buses, all the mechanical upgrades that we're usually successful getting. That will come towards the board for approval in September. So this capital plan application that we're looking for you to support is for the bigger projects that we would like to see. And I believe what is required is a resolution. That the board approve a resolution for the 2022-23 capital plan as outlined.
Okay, the suggested motion is that the board approve the 2022-2023 capital plan submission as outlined in the summary provided by Secretary Treasurer Patrick. Can we have a mover for that motion, please? Okay, Trustee Eddie, Trustee Franklin. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. The motion is passed. Then to the next item, which will be a per diem meal rate. Again.
Yeah, so this one is a late addition because this one actually was a bit of a surprise. When we do the remuneration review, we also gather other information from various school districts around the province. And one of the items that we've often looked at and reviewed is the per diem and the meal rates. And you know, it hasn't changed for many, many years. 15 plus years, it's been the same. And as you know, costs have gone up in that time. And we would take a look at it. If the average hadn't changed, we didn't often bring it to the board. But this year, something has changed. Both the provincial government has increased their per diem rate, as well as BCSTA has also increased their per diem rate. And as this is a form of compensation, we would like to see the board approve any change. And of course, mileage, the board follows the BCSTA rate. So we have a recommendation to do the per diem at the BCSTA rate. Now, one other important thing to note, though, with the per diems is as the board sets the per diem, it is utilized by all staff and within the school district. So the per diem rate is what's used for teachers, for QP, for exempt staff, for principals as we go on our various functions. So it's not just a per diem meal rate for board and trustees, but you do set this rate. So you can just kind of see the various comparisons. I do suspect, though, as the rates change for some, it'll start to change for all. You can see on the high end is Vancouver Island North, and then the average is $50. So. Okay. The suggested motion is that the board approves the increase in the per diem rates as outlined in the summary provided by Secretary Treasurer Patrick. Do we have a mover for that? Trustee Eddie, Trustee Franklin. Discussion? Trustee Eddie.
Just quickly, the per diem rates increasing $5 for a trip to Vancouver, I think is quite reasonable. As mentioned, the cost of dining out has increased, and I predict that as businesses restart, the cost of dining out will continue to increase as they try to get their footing underneath them again.
Trustee Hagan. You're muted. You're muted.
Just wondering what the cost implication is across the district.
The simple answer is it's a 10% per diem cost increase. I don't have the full cost increase. Of course, this past year and a half through pandemic, we haven't utilized per diems as much. On a whole, the per diem usage is in the thousands. Like I would, to just give it a general idea, it's, you know, less, probably in the mid thousands, 5,000 per year total, maybe, but definitely less than $10,000. So it has an impact. We're not talking like an increased cost of tens of thousands. It is a cost of thousands in the singles, and this is often supported by departmental programs, schools. It is a standard rate on our sheets, so the costs are spread amongst many different places. There's not a single budget that will be impacted by this, which is typical of inflation for a lot of our school district budgets.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3. Okay, the motion is passed. And we will move on to the second last item on the agenda, and that's the summer board office closures. Again, Secretary Treasurer Patrick.
Yes, so we typically close the board office. So there's lots of staff that are still working through summer. We have lots of 12-month staff. We have our hardworking finance staff that's actually their busiest time is working on the financial statements at that time. But a lot of education staff have gone, and it's also a good opportunity for those staff that are 12 months to take holidays. So we lock the doors. We will still be receiving mail, answering the phone, and still working. But yeah, we for all intents and purposes consider the board office to be closed for those dates. I think so. I believe it is from July 19th closing and reopening on August 20th.
Thank you. I certainly hope that after this year and last summer, with all the extra work that was involved and all the changes, that all of you take the opportunity to take your break and to take the chance just to sit back, relax, and recharge your batteries. I think you're all going to need it. So anyway, I hope you do have a good summer. And the last item then will be, I'll go ahead and go to Ms. Patrick. Do we have any questions from anyone present on the agenda items?
We do, Chairperson Kerr. We received a question from CRDTA President Dave Harper. Given that the CRDTA was not asked to appoint any representatives to the District Literacy Initiative, characterized as a committee, but a true committee would require union involvement by the collective agreement, I am interested to know what kind of funding and release time the senior management team will recommend to the board in order to make this board district initiative successful.
I can take that one on. Thank you for the question, Dave. So the working group that we had for literacy did include CRDTA members, 4. There were school-based members, also 4, and myself as senior management. So we did have representation on the committee that was working around literacy. In terms of the resources needed, we're going to be collecting data. We are asking for feedback from all teachers on Thursday. We've met with teacher librarians already. We're meeting with LST tomorrow and all school staffs at elementary on Thursday. So there's going to be lots of opportunity for teacher input. Based on that input, based on data from schools, we'll then be allocating from our strategic budget in ways to support the learning and the needs at school. But that will need to come from the schools, and that will be after collection of data. So I hope that answers the question.
certainly thorough.
There are no other questions at this time.
Okay, well, let's give another minute and then we can call on Trustee Hagan. Well, I guess there are no other questions coming, so I would like to just, yes, okay.
I just wanted to, I got a nice note from Fred, who, Principal Schaub from Quadra, who had tried so hard to be part of Sheldon's presentation, and one, he wanted to apologize to the trustees for the tech issues, which I don't think he's responsible for apologizing, but because he sent that, I thought it would also be an opportunity. Knowing Fred, he would have come on to introduce Sheldon and give Sheldon all the credit for this program, but I also want to acknowledge that an outdoor ed program like that harnesses the strengths and capacity of a staff member happens with the support of a school-based administrator. And so it gives me a chance to also acknowledge Principal Schaub, although of course he would never have said anything about himself. It would have all been about Sheldon, but I just wanted to take that opportunity from the text he sent, one, to apologize to trustees, but to acknowledge his role in such an innovative and great program. So thank you.
I think there'll be a lot of eyes on that program to see how things progress in the next year from the board. And just finally, before we finish up, I would like to thank our senior management team and also our trustees, the rest of you trustees who have done so much this year to make the situation in schools as safe and as positive as they can be. And I recognize the extra work that our senior management team last summer was incredible, with the rapid pivoting that had to be done a couple of times over the summer. So thank you to all, and I hope you all have a terrific summer, and I look forward to seeing you all again in September. Trustee Hagan.
Excuse me, Chairperson Kerr, sorry. There was two other comments that have come in from CRDTA President Dave Harper. I believe it's in follow-up or in response to the answer that was given to the question he asked. The comments came in no, and it does not. So I'm assuming that he may have some other additional follow-up questions that perhaps the board might need to respond through writing or another means.
If the question is clear, I guess.
I just wanted to share that those two comments came in.
Okay, and it looks like Stokely has a question. Just kidding. Anyway, Trustee Hagan.
You guys have a wonderful break, and I'd like to move adjournment of this meeting.
All those in favor of adjournment, raise your hands.
Happy summer.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah, we stand adjourned.